Today, we're counting down the top 10 video games. So, without any further ado, except for wasting your time by saying the words "without any further ado," which are in fact... Okay, I lied, guys. This game is actually number 1, but user retention data suggests that fewer people will actually watch all the way to the end of the video, and everyone needs to see this. Everyone I have shown this game to who has played it all the way to the end has cried from how heartwarming and cathartic it is. If you were to ask me who I think would enjoy this game, I would say definitely humans, people, maybe some aliens, hard to say. It's cute, it's endlessly clever and funny, it has some really fun mechanics to play around with in terms of movement, and even has a really neat speedrun that tests all the skills in the game that are fun. But most importantly, it's a wise game. It teaches about sibling relationships and insecurities and finding confidence and being creative and learning to be good to each other in all the unique ways that each of us deserve. If even one more person buys this video game at my recommendation, this whole video was worth the time and effort. A lot of you will be familiar with this game from having played the early months of Splatoon 3 competitively, but they actually made a whole game where you get to be a crab the entire time. Naturally, this was overpowered, so they put a lot more enemies in the game than there are in Splatoon to balance it out. This game is made by Noisestorm, the artist who made Crab Rave. Yes, this is playable Crab Rave, and it has Noisestorm music in the soundtrack because of course it does. It's a fun little roguelike, which I'm saying so it boosts engagement, since nerds cannot possibly contain themselves from correcting someone on the distinction between roguelikes and roguelites, which I keep finding myself going back to as a time killer when I want to turn my brain off and become a crustacean for a little while. The movement is quick and responsive, the upgrades are really satisfying and strategic and give you a lot of different win conditions, and the premise is very silly, which is great. Splatoon's pretty neat, I think. I beat this game recently, and the credits for the game are longer than the credits for any movie I've ever seen. It's incredible how many different people had a hand in making this game, and consequently, how massive in scope the project managed to be. It's like Mass Effect, except if Mass Effect had the game mechanics of one of the best known and most successful tabletop games ever, one which is designed to actually complement the story instead of interrupting it. And if Mass Effect were way bigger, and if it weren't just an illusion that the choices you make mattered, and also all the NPCs are romanceable regardless of your gender. And I really, really like Mass Effect, to be clear. There's a thrill to hearing the question, "Who are you?" on the character creation screen, how it sets your mind racing about the massive toy box full of choices for you to make, and how it spurs your thoughts about the impact you're about to have on the world around you. Hacksball is my favorite video game adaptation of soccer, and I know I'm hurting a Rocket League fan's feelings by saying that, but also it's massively more accessible than Rocket League because it's so simple. It runs on such simple hardware, and it's understandable and playable even by people who are not gamers. I got my non-gamer coworkers excited and invested in playing this game. People who would have fumbled helplessly with the controls and never even touched the ball playing Rocket League. And yet, there is still a huge skill ceiling and tons of mechanical depth in Hacksball nonetheless. The game is also full of modding potential to create all sorts of custom game modes and challenges for learning the game better, crossing over into other genres at times, and also providing the ability to customize the game for optimal competitiveness. Super Smash Bros. Melee was not intended to be as good a game as it is. There's a really huge learning curve, and it's hard to get people to commit to it. There are multiple frame-perfect inputs that I just expect myself to be able to perform in a competitive setting, and I'm not even at a particularly high competitive level compared to how far players of this game can go. It's a good tournament run for me if I win more sets than I lose. That said, this game makes me feel free to express myself in ways no other video game has. Everyone who plays this game deserves an honorary title of speedrunner, because you don't play Melee the way the developers intended you to play it. You play it as well as you're capable of breaking and exploiting the game's physics engine. Every time I do something Nintendo didn't want, I feel like I'm spraying graffiti on the side of their boxcar. And every time I attend a tournament, I feel like I'm in an underground music scene that the mainstream is still a few years from discovering and bringing to a wider audience. The antagonistic relationship that Nintendo has with the competitive Melee community that really came to a head with the release of Super Smash Bros. Brawl and has been simmering ever since is actually a feature. If not for that, I think we would have moved on from Melee and played the sequels, but unlike so many other video game communities that did just that with their franchises, we said, screw that, this is the game we like, not that one, and we kept playing Melee. This game has been around longer than just about any competitive video game. I genuinely think it might be an esport that starts to get passed down the generations like ball sports do. There's no Soccer 2, there's no Baseball Ultimate, and there will never really be a Super Smash Bros. Melee 2. The community just put the game online with matchmaking and better netcode than Nintendo put in Smash Ultimate because they're dedicated to this game continuing to be played. They will not let it die. Some of them will still be playing this game in their nursing homes. I'm never going to get tired of watching top 8 of a Melee major, and I'm always happy to teach new people about this game. Though, I'll warn you, I will probably get too excited and teach you way more than you can process and overwhelm you, because I'm too passionate about the game and I've been learning too many cool things about it for too long. So actually, this is swapped from where I wanted to put Super Smash Bros. Melee. I would put Melee higher, but I needed to explain the appeal of Melee so that you would understand Project M. For those who don't know, Project M is a mod for Super Smash Bros. Brawl. It was made when Brawl released, and people who loved competitive Melee saw that Brawl devs had removed basically everything about the movement and mechanics that made them fall in love with Melee. And some of those competitive Melee players decided that they were going to fix that. It was extremely well made, balanced far better than any mainline Smash Bros. Game ever has been on any patch. And it was rapidly rising in popularity, with tournaments for it being run alongside the other competitive Smash titles, until, it's widely believed, Nintendo sent the developers a cease and desist order. So if Melee is a graffiti artist tagging a boxcar, Project M is cyberpunk runners hacking an evil corporation for the good of humanity. Nintendo does not want people to know about this game. They will send cease and desist orders against it. Every major tournament has removed it from the lineup, and major content creators have been contacted by Nintendo and convinced through often underhanded means to stop promoting it. Project M is necessarily smaller because it's not an official Nintendo game, and it's also suffering from Nintendo trying to disrupt its ability to market itself. Project M, however, is too fucking sick to die. And a lot of the major tournaments that have removed it from the lineup of games also have shadow majors, events held conveniently close to the premises of the actual major tournaments, with much more clandestine marketing. The community is incredible, because when a group of people knows they need each other, that they are all they've got, they band together in that way that humans do at their very best, and they get things done. The need to love and be loved in one way or another is a critical part of the human experience, and Hatoful Boyfriend examines this human need brilliantly by turning you into a pigeon. All the potential boyfriends are birds, and at least one of them will end up murdering you if you go far enough in pursuing him, just like in real life. You may come to this channel for dating advice, but I promise you my dating game advice is also on point, and this is about as good as they get. If you have beaten Dark Souls 1, you are capable of completing any video game as long as you devote a sufficient amount of time to it. It is one of the best blends of video game mechanics and storytelling and theming ever made. It has a masterpiece of a soundtrack, and I'm about to talk about other things that are good about it, but if you haven't played it and you are a gamer, you are legally required, by law, under threat of detainment by the authorities, to skip to the timestamp on screen right now, so you don't get this masterpiece spoiled for you. Because unlike other games, where it's just disappointing to know how the story ends or who dies or whatever, I can spoil the game's mechanics, the theming, the whole mess of interconnected devices and meaning that no other medium than video games is capable of, and it would take away any chance you will ever have to play this game for the first time with its meaning and intended experience intact. Please, for the sake of your ability as a human to enjoy this one-of-a-kind work of art, only watch this if you have already beaten Dark Souls 1. Dark Souls is an infamously difficult game to understand and get into. It has a lot of aspects that haven't aged well, but even on launch, back in a time when people were willing to put up with more jank from a video game, it was really unforgiving, gave insufficient direction, had a pretty uninteractive tutorial that taught you important game mechanics well before you were familiar with the game enough to understand their utility and really learn how to use them, and a lot of people gave up on one of the earlier bosses in the game. While that sounds like terrible game design, I swear to you that I sincerely believe that's actually the entire point of playing this game, and that the game would be worse without it. You can tell me I'm coping in the comments, but let me make my case first. In the tutorial area, the first sense of direction and purpose you get comes when a character breaks you out of your cell, and then gives you your healing item in death, imploring you to embark on a journey and ring the Bell of Awakening. It's understandable that the instruction is cut a little short, that they're not able to give proper context for what that is, because they are dying. But it's something to do other than rot in a cell, so you get some equipment, beat a boss, and leave. Immediately upon leaving, the very next NPC you can talk to reveals that even your objective up until this point was incomplete. That you actually need to find 2 Bells of Awakening, and that if you ring both of them...
Ring them both, and something happened. Brilliant, right? Not much to go on, but I have a feeling that won't stop you.
You still have no idea why you're doing this. You also have no idea where you're going. There are like 5 different directions you can go in when you reach this point in the game, and only one of them is really the best way to go for the level you're at and the difficulty of enemies you're ready for. There are no signs pointing you anywhere. In fact, the correct way to go is arguably the most difficult one to see. The game orients your camera away from it by default, and it's off in the distance. The game just lets you find that out the hard way. This does not feel like a thing that is designed for you to be able to do. That's usually the point of a video game, to be something that's designed to give the player a smooth, understandable, consistently enjoyable experience. But the world of Dark Souls is not designed for the player. It is designed by the gods of the Dark Souls lore to manipulate the player. At some point, if they persevere long enough, a player learns enough of the game's tricks, gets good enough at the combat, that they start to believe. And this by itself is a magical, empowering feeling. I remember when I first felt it upon beating the Bell Gargoyles. See, the multiplayer for this game is entwined with the single player. Even if you're playing solo, you'll see phantoms, other players that are actually currently playing the game, with the gear they've unlocked at some point in the game, wandering around and doing the same kinds of things that you are. There had been an environmental sound effect playing every now and then of a church bell ringing, which just seemed atmospheric at first, but then I realized, once I beat the gargoyles and I got to ring the Bell of Awakening, that the Bell of Awakening is what I had been hearing all along. That bell was a sign that other players, the phantoms I had seen every now and then playing the game alongside me, had done it. It was a sign that I could do it too, and I did do it. That experience of feeling like a challenge is impossible, but persevering long enough to prove yourself wrong, is so incredibly addictive. This lesson that if you just keep persevering, reflecting, and persevering some more, that you will get somewhere, is something that has legitimately helped people I know manage depression or improve their outlooks on life. From that point on, I knew that I would continue to play Dark Souls 1 until I beat it. But I still had no idea why I, my character, or me myself, was doing anything thematically. I had an intrinsic motivation to prove my abilities to myself, but ask me what the Bell of Awakening was for, and I'd be like, I don't know, I'm playing a fantasy game and they told me to do a thing. I'm not going to think too much about it. Fast forward a while, and I beat an especially difficult boss, and I'm greeted by this beautiful goddess, Guinevere, a benevolent, maternal, angelic figure who confirms that what I've done is right, tells me I can avert the tragedy of the world we inhabit, and unlocks for me the powerful ability to fast travel. For context, traveling in Dark Souls is difficult and scary. The enemies in every passageway always respawn, so even if you've been through an area a dozen times, there's always the chance you'll just die there and have to start over. And even if you don't, it will take a long time to traverse the map. Now, though, you've earned this benefactor's favor, and she has granted you the magical power to circumnavigate those hardships, and it feels so right. It's such a powerful affirmation that you're on the right track, that if you keep going, everything will be okay. It's also a fundamental lie. This image of the goddess is fake, a magical projection that vanishes upon dealing even the weakest amount of damage, plunging the entire glorious castle area around you into its true state, ominous darkness and decay. But you don't know that initially, so unless you're the type who thinks killing every NPC in a video game is a cool personality trait, you willingly carry out the noble task she urges you to complete, and you probably miss the character who tells you to question her and her servant's motives, and you get all the way to the final boss, beat him, and then decide to link the flame. Something you've been told is what you need to do to avert the death and undeath of so many people that has tortured those like you for so long. You've never been told what it actually means. So you've just figured, it's some magical symbolic thing I'm going to do. But what it really means is that you self-immolate. You feed the fire with your own body and soul. I remember looking at the screen as the credits rolled, dumbfounded, that nobody told me I would be sacrificing myself. Suddenly unsure of the consequences of my actions, wondering if I had been lied to, why I had done any of this to begin with. It felt like bad storytelling, but now I know the truth. When we're born, powerful people that have already been at work in the world see us and see our potential value and know that if they give us a sense of purpose, a goal to work toward, they can get us to go to incredible lengths to do something that is useful to them without them ever actually telling us that the only reason we're doing it is that they benefit from us doing it. They'll give us ideas of a religious or altruistic or patriotic nature through propaganda in various forms, sure, but they won't tell us what's really going on. Countless people will die, having lived lives uninformed even about the quest the powers that be intended them to embark on, let alone what their actual place in the world really was. At the beginning of the game, you are one of these people. You're given the choice to rot, ignorant, unwilling to act, to leave a save file you barely made any progress in, and abandon the world of Dark Souls altogether. But some people won't be bothered by the lack of direction, and they'll accomplish something because a carrot is hung from a stick, and they'll kill many, many enemies, empower themselves massively, min-max and optimize, practice and perfect, and all of this will serve the will of the immortal manipulators who are never even called on to explain themselves. In Dark Souls, your place in the world is grim. You're a lowly person in the presence of gods and dragons and monsters. Death comes easily and frequently. Everyone around you has a tragic story, and all the happiest, most positive, best NPCs that you interact with die, almost inevitably having lost their sanity and pursued something it's clear to see is impossible and pointless from a different point of view. It's enough to cause you to forget sometimes that you are undead, and thus will simply respawn every time you die, but this time with more knowledge, and that this is more powerful than anything in the game can possibly compete with if you simply don't give up. You are the most powerful character in all of Dark Souls, made to feel like the weakest, made to feel like you should serve, that your purpose is to serve, when in fact you could, in many ways, defy and usurp. While you may not ever be able to change the fundamental order of the world, you can at least make your own place in it. One of the happiest NPCs in the entire franchise may well be the one in Dark Souls 3, who urges you to find for yourself
a sweetly rotting bed to lie upon.
It's a game that poses the existential question and shows you what your answer is to it, especially in an environment like our real world, where you are misinformed at every turn by people looking to materially benefit from your efforts that you think are going toward enriching yourself. You cannot go into this game the same way a second time, because now you will be informed. Now you will know the deception of the gods and the way to accrue power quickly and efficiently, and you'll know the patterns of the bosses, and they'll be easy to you because the power you amassed wasn't just in leveling up, it was in becoming better at the game too. In this game, you get second tries, and you're able to play things out the way you'd rather they happen now that you know all the things you've learned from lore expert VaatiVidya and forums you read online, and you're able to have your ideal playthrough, but the way you will go through life is only informed by having played the game blind for the first time and stumbled through the webs of deception no one warned you about, and struggled and quit and came back because the game was never designed to be fair at all. This game is one of the greater works of art that has ever been created, in my opinion. It is surpassed only by number 1. League of Legends is the biggest esport on Earth if you look holistically at the available metrics. It has the highest peak viewership numbers, production that rivals ESPN, and an incredible amount of longevity considering that video games are commercial products, unlike sports, where no CEO, as we've said, has ever pushed for a sequel to soccer. But League of Legends is also the highest rated Netflix show of all time, at least as of when it released, with 100% ratings on Rotten Tomatoes, made by an animation studio that I genuinely believe surpasses Pixar in artistry. And League of Legends is also a virtual idol group with a music video that has more views on YouTube than Stronger by Kanye West. Stronger is the most viewed music video on YouTube by Kanye West, and it had a 9-year head start. At this point, everything Riot Games makes is made with a level of professionalism that exceeds professionalism and becomes artistry. There's a dedication to synergizing between every element of a production that you just don't see in less successful properties that don't have this much money to leverage. The animation and the music and the cinematography and the lyrics and the narrative and the gameplay are all made with every other element in mind in every medium this IP occupies, which is almost all of them. Yes, there is gameplay in the music videos. That's Ari's charm, timed to the line, so keep your eyes on me now. That's Akali's smoke bomb used to cut from one shot of the music video to another. That's Evelyn being evil and scary, and yes, that character design is part of her gameplay. The design of the character forces you to play like a monster, stealthily tracking prey. They accomplished that in the gameplay alone, and not just from how she's talking about brutally murdering people and loving every second of their pain, but also, that part is deeply unsettling, and I feel visceral feelings of unease when I play her. You can't deny that this video game and its associated IPs is one of the greatest artistic achievements of our time, by which I mean you can totally deny that, even though you're wrong, and the engagement from you doing that will tell the YouTube algorithm to recommend this video to more people. Happy April, everybody! Oh, honorable mention to Doom Eternal.
Soldier Boy, tell me. I got a new damn for y'all, call it Soldier Boy. You just gotta punch, then crank back 3 times from left to right. Soldier Boy, I'm in it.